Hello and welcome to In the Ballpark. It's Sam Menhennet back again, joined of course by Michael Serpell on the eastern coast of America. The United States of America is waving the flag. And I'm here in Melbourne in the middle of winter, so I'm a bit jealous of the warm weather he's been probably enjoying over the last couple of weeks. How are you, mate?
Sammy, good to see you, mate. Don't worry, my alliances still lie with Australia, particularly during the Olympics. I'll just check the gold medal count on day 3, I believe it is. We are still in the top 5 countries in the world. That has got to, I don't know, make you a little bit excited about the fact that, we've got a small population, but we always seem to punch above our weight. I'm definitely punching above my weight here, Sammy. It's been a good time in Davis, California so far. We're right in the middle, or should I say just past the middle point of our baseball season in the Pioneer Baseball League. And the team broke even in the first half, and we're currently leading in the second half of the season. It's a bit strange, Sammy. What they do here is in the second half of the season, you can actually, it's almost like your tally restarts. So if you haven't gotten a playoff spot, like in other words, if you're one of those top 3 teams who didn't do as well in the first half of the season, second half of the season, you can get a playoff spot. So lots to play for in the second half. And I think it's going to come down to the wire, potentially with our team and a couple of other teams around us on the overall standing. So, mate, all going very well, I got to say.
Well, that's very exciting. I was just about to say if you joined us with our first podcast at the start of the footy season and wondering where the episodes have been all year and all season, well, it kind of went astray because, of course, when we first recorded, Michael was in Melbourne and not the other side of the world. So it's been a whirlwind couple of months. So I'm glad we can still record something. And I really think it opens up an exciting perspective getting your sporting view from the US, and of course getting our side of things view here. So it makes it an interesting thing, and of course you can keep up to date with all the sporting things that's going on in America at the moment. But back home, and where we started this podcast, of course, is the footy season, and there is only 4 weeks left, which to me has absolutely flown so far, and it's probably been, and I know I say this every year for the last couple of years, but I'd have to say, with the way the things are at the moment in the ladder, it's probably been one of the craziest seasons yet. And I know, yes, as I was saying, it's become a cliche, but really this year, the gap between pretty much 14th spot and second is that close.
It's crazy, Sammy. Like I've been watching, obviously remotely here in the US, haven't been able to see many games, but I just watch the ladder change from week to week. And typically a lot of footy pundits will say, okay, we're past the halfway point of the season. The 8 has fully taken shape. Not many teams are going to drop out from this point onwards, but this is just one of those seasons where it is literally going to come down to, I believe, several results in that round 24 fixture. I think it's one of the most exciting finishes that we're going to have in a long time. I know last year it kind of fizzled out. I think the round before the final round, because I think Adelaide lost that very close game. And as a result, a lot of the ladder was locked in for that final round. But this season, I think, is going to be even more so, right on a knife's edge. And you may even have games, Sammy, where, there's been teams in the past where they've had to win by like 40 plus points to get like a top 4 spot. It could almost be that similar kind of trajectory as well. And, for both of our teams, although they've been sitting pretty comfortably in the top 8 for the majority of the season, that being, of course, Carlton and the Bombers, there's still a lot of variables that can happen. Obviously, for my side, there's been a big slump. For your side, there's been a couple of hurdles, to say the least. So it's going to be fascinating. Can our teams find form in the back half of the season, or should I say the last 4 games of the season? Well, Sammy, I wish I had the answer for you, but it's going to be very exciting to watch.
Yeah, and the games too that we've got coming up, of course, just going through this round, to starting off round 21, Dogs in Melbourne hanging on the edge of their lifeline of a season. They or their fans would be very disappointed. Of course, pressure on the Bulldogs. Probably had a slow start to the year, but at the moment they're a team in fine form. The Eagles and the Suns in Dimmer's first season as coach, they look like they could potentially make the final two. They've been undefeated at home up until I think it was last week.
Yeah, against Brisbane.
Yeah, and so showing something there. North and Richmond, look, North will be the highest off the bottom, I think, that they'll finish. Richmond, have obviously, first time they've been spooners in a long time. Geelong still showing stuff, even though we thought they were probably, have their Zimmer frame still by now. Adelaide, probably one of the disappointing ones. After you mentioned the way that they missed out last season, to be where they are this year, I would say it's very disappointing in South Australia for them. Collingwood, and Jimmy was very, very forceful of this in the first episode that they would be a major drop, and they've disappeared. The hunter became the hunted. Is there still life left in them? And then that Collingwood-Carlton becomes a massive clash again, always at the right time. And, of course, Scott Pendlebury playing his 400th game this weekend, so that makes Saturday night even a whopper of a game. Port and Sydney. Port kind of fiddling away. Ken Hinkley again, pressure on him. Sydney, their form, as long with Carlton as well, the top two have kind of slipped away. I think they've lost their last 3 or 4, Sydney. So will they straighten that up? The Giants and Hawks. Before we recorded, I was mentioning to Michael how Hawthorn at the moment have become really likeable. They're just the fun, like a no fucks given attitude. Really, they are having so much fun out there. Ginnivan shushing the Collingwood fan base, sending them to sleep, and they just look like they're having fun. Giants turn things around. I think they're going to be back up there again. The Bombers, it's going to be a really hard fixture. The last 4 weeks, we'll look at that in a minute too. We'll judge that down. And then one that we have to apologise for, which I've been copying slack from my mates since we recorded that first episode. Our biggest blunder of the season was saying that Fremantle would be a wooden spooners. I blame you for that one. I think I just tuned into what you were saying.
We really didn't give this enough thought.
No.
I know you'll continue to go through the teams now, but we just have to say, sorry, Fremantle. Like, you've got an unbelievable core nucleus of young talent, guys who are role players, a team that's really on the build, and actually a forward line now that looks more ominous than it ever has before. So, yeah, we got that one wrong. Terribly.
Can I just say that my second pick for Wooden Spoon was Richmond. So if I had gone with my second pick.
Yep.
And then the final game of this round, St Kilda and Brisbane. Saints, they're still missing a couple of pieces. But I feel like they will scrape some decent wins in the last couple of weeks, which will affect placings. And of course, the other grand finalists from last year, Brisbane, they are starting to storm home. So it's going to be exciting final 4 weeks. And as we were talking before, missing the Thursday night game I am, since we haven't had that for the last few weeks, we're having games where they're lined up exactly at the same time. I think there's about 2 or 3 around that games are on the exact same time with no difference, which I think is very purposeful when you're mentioning those final couple of rounds where we could see games percentage battling it out live, which will be interesting. And I think, this will be the first time that we will really see that the way things are close, because every game counts, really, for the next 4 weeks. It really does, in more ways than we could have imagined. So, who, Michael, do you think is at most stake over the next 4 weeks?
Oh, most stake. It's a great question. I almost want to biasly say Essendon, but I feel like after the two disappointing losses to Adelaide and St Kilda, that the line for so many of the fans and probably a lot of the footy experts around the traps have already rode the team off. I think probably a bit of false form. You top four for most of the year, beating teams kind of in and around the eight. And then, you get to this part of the year where you really got to start performing, and really starting to hit your straps. And the club just hasn't done it. So, yeah, not sure why there's such a weak underbelly, Sam. I think it's been around for quite a long time. I think if we don't win this weekend, I think it's season over. I don't know mathematically where that's at. I think we sit half a game outside the eight, but a team like Bulldog, a team like the Hawks, there's multiple teams that can take that spot. Yeah. So I think if we're already out of the eight at the end of this round, but I think we're the most at stake to stay out of the eight. I feel like you could make an argument for a lot of teams getting in. I feel like we're the team that I just struggle to see getting back in the most. Out of all the teams that could potentially fall out and come back in, I feel like we're the one that's most at stake. So that game against Fremantle, it's at the MCG, I believe, this weekend, Sam, which typically doesn't happen for these two clubs. So it'll be a really, really close watch.
So, yeah, your final 4 weeks, Fremantle at home at the G, Marvel against the Suns, which will be interesting, a replay of that really close match a couple of weeks ago. Sydney at Marvel and Brisbane at the Gabba. But to be fair to the Bombers, you've had, I think it was the last 10 weeks of this season all in Melbourne apart from the Gabba. So you've had a lot of games in Melbourne. So
Yeah. And prior to that, I think we hadn't lost many games in Melbourne either. I think we hadn't lost many games at Marvel up until not sure what game it was, but we had a really good record there. So, I think everyone kind of praised the Bombers after that win against Collingwood, but now a lot of people are starting to see really the drastic drop of Collingwood. They lost to Geelong, I think, the week after by a lot, and then they've obviously lost to Hawthorn since. I think they lost to the Gold Coast the week before us. So not saying those teams are bad teams, but, the Collingwood of a couple of years ago, you just expect them to win those games or at least them be a lot closer. So I know the talk's been about Collingwood's aura missing, but I think the Bombers' early season aura is gone, and it's the second year in a row that's happening, Sam. So don't know what it is. Don't know whether we just use all the fuel in the tank early and then we have nothing left. But yeah, I would say our credentials and wanting to play finals this season, which so many people thought was going to happen, that's most at stake for us, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen the clip of there was a little mashup of all your former coaches during a press conference, and Jesus. It's funny how relevant some of the things said speak eerily true, and it was every single one of your coaches for the past 10 years.
Bomber Thompson one did come out recently, and he was just saying, like, when are we going to be a serious team? Yes. Like, when is it going to happen? We're just not consistent. So consistency always comes up, and just, being pretenders. So, yeah, I'd love to see that switch at some point, Sammy, but until something drastically happens, it's probably not our year this year either, which is pretty sad. I don't think many people would have predicted us to be in the eight. But I think now that we've seen what we can do, I think a lot of people are disappointed. So it's another bitter taste in the mouth, potentially at the end of this 4-week period.
How's the interstate teams, though? But listen to this top 4 at the moment. Sydney, Brisbane, Fremantle, Carlton, GWS, Geelong, Port, and the Western Bulldogs. So it's almost like the ladder's turned on its head.
Wow.
So those and Carlton were in that second spot for a while, and I was just like, we've got to hold on to a qualifying spot, because if we have to play a final away, it's going to be very, very difficult. That home final is so important.
2 home finals
potential.
potentially if you can get it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And Sammy, who's most at stake for you?
Um, um, oh, hang on.
He's getting a
Got a
call.
phone call.
It's Ross the boss.
um, it's
You
a
can say
tough one.
Carlton too. I don't know, but I mean,
Well,
I
I
feel like
guess
it's more,
there's
it's less
bias
dire for
there.
you guys, and
Yeah.
it's less dire.
No. Maybe I would say if I'm allowed to have two picks, I'd probably say Port Adelaide or the Bulldogs.
Interesting.
I think the pressure on both those coaches for the last couple of seasons has been very big, and I know Bulldogs have switched their form up recently and are really looking the goods. Is it enough? Is it enough? Is this just a couple flash in the pan kind of thing that we've seen with them? Well, they'll come out for a couple of weeks, strike hot, and then just disappear. Or is this something really special that they're brewing? Finally, they've got Lob to do something. They've lobbed him down back, and he's all right down there. So that's working for now.
Liam Jones effect.
And then seeing some of the young guns, of course, really start to pop up. How quick does Ed Richards has aged in the last couple of years? He looks like a completely different player.
I know that you're talking about the redhead, right?
Yes.
Yeah. He's a real talent. But yeah, that happened really quickly. Even Aaron Norton is almost. I'd almost say some people are describing him like a veteran, but it's like, has he really
Yep.
been around for that long? But, he has developed and he's had his opportunities. Forwards, of course, take a lot longer. So it's good, even
Jamara.
though he started Jamara too. Wow, God, he's a scary prospect, isn't he? I think a lot of people were very impatient in his very first season. Obviously, the likening tag to Buddy Franklin was one that was put on him at the very start. But you can sort of see why, the agility, just some of the freakish goals that he's kicking. He's throwing his body around a lot more now, which is good to see. So, yeah, I mean, if the Bulldogs are going to do anything this season, I think he's going to carry a lot of their hopes, particularly in that forward line and potentially on that wing.
Yep. Okay. And I know we haven't been so good at predictions so far, but with these final 4 weeks, and not sure of our podcast schedule, but don't you worry, we'll be putting finals content. We won't be missing out on that. But if you were to pick the teams that miss out now and pick the final 8, I know it's a very, very hard thing to do at this stage. But who makes
You go
it in and who
first,
doesn't
Sammy.
make the count?
You go first, Sammy. I've got to look at this ladder.
Now, I screenshotted this the other day. Let me find it.
Oh, you've already done your predictor?
Yes, but I'm worried my thoughts have changed since then. But I took a screenshot the other day. Okay. All right. I think. All right. So in
You got it?
in my 8, the teams that miss out, Hawthorn just
Oh,
miss
wow.
out. They're the 9th spot. And then Essendon, Gold Coast, Collingwood, and Melbourne. So the Dogs make it. Port make it. Geelong, GWS, Fremantle, Brisbane, Carlton, and Sydney, of course.
Wow. I'm just quickly racing through the ladder prediction now, trying to fix it. Yeah, I think I've got to agree with you. I think it's going to end up being, I think Essendon are just going to miss out. I think,
So it's pretty much the ladder it is now, really.
I think
It's what
so.
the ladder is live.
Yeah, I think so. Yep. Yeah, I think the Bulldogs will make it. Yep.
Now, some
I'm
statement
second.
games over the next 4 weeks. Ones that really will turn the anchor, I think. Carlton and Hawthorn are Sunday. Obviously, we got Carlton Collingwood this weekend, but Carlton and Hawthorn at the MCG. I think if Carlton want to solidify a top 4 spot, they've got to win at least 2 of the next 4. And the way Hawthorn really want to make that. If Hawthorn do manage to scrape in, it'll be so unbelievable for their team and one of the quickest rebuilds I've ever seen, because Sam Mitchell seems
Honestly.
to have a really good grasp on it at the minute, and if they do make it, it will be absolutely terrifying who comes against them. It could be 2016 vibes with the Bulldogs all over again. A few other big games, of course, the Essendon and Suns rematch. Dockers and Geelong always seem to have close encounters. Brisbane and the Giants, that's an interesting one. Collingwood and Brisbane, they seem to always find the way. St Kilda and Geelong, can they make a dagger on them? They're sitting 6th at the moment, Geelong. And then for the last round, really interesting here, Brisbane, Essendon, Collingwood and Melbourne, Bulldogs and Giants. Wow. In the last round. Could that be for a spot? The old new rivalry, really. And that's in Ballarat. Oh, that's interesting. And Fremantle and Port. So, exciting 4 weeks. I can't wait for September. I want it to get warmer. I'm sick of this cold.
Hey, be careful what you wish for. Where I am at the moment, Sammy, my God, it's like 40 degrees. So we're getting some pretty extreme heat here. So, yep, I'm definitely looking forward to mid-30s at some point.
Now, have you brought the old Sharon out onto the East Coast? Have you had a kick around California?
Sammy, I haven't, but a lot of the baseball players before the start of a game are throwing around like an NFL football. So I feel like if I was to just one day waltz out with the Sharon,
that's really good content.
I think they would genuinely love it. I think some of them would be spuds, but I think others would genuinely know how to roost it, because, you know, a lot of the baseball players, Sammy, they are so gifted, like with multiple sports. Like a lot of them have played college football, basketball, but then you've got others that are like your Babe Ruth style. They're an absolute brick shithouse, but they can just hit the ball a long way. So you kind of got those two different camps of athleticism with baseball. But unfortunately, Sammy, like I left pretty quickly from Melbourne and I didn't get the chance to bring out a footy, but I've brought my Essendon jerseys. Maybe I should try and trade those in for a Sharon. And I've got a couple of the Matildas kits. Unfortunately, I think they're out of the Olympics. But yeah, I've definitely got some Aussie representative stuff. But I am really keen. In December, my mum's going to come and visit me. So I'm going to tell her to bring some Milo, bring some Tim Tams, and of course, bring a Sharon. Has to be done. But yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. And, you know, like having watched so much baseball, it's funny now how many things I'm picking up on. You know, it's one of those things like you can, you know, advance bases on wild pitches, which is almost like a wide delivery in cricket. You know, there's a rule in our league, if it hits the wall, it's 2 runs, whereas I think in major leagues, like you can just keep circling the bases. And then we have a knockout round, Sammy, which is a home run derby. So after 9 innings, if the scores are still level, and sometimes they're really low scoring games, like there's really good pitching displays, so it might be 1-1. And this knockout round, you literally have 2 minutes. Just imagine this, Sammy, 2 minutes. One of the coaches is just throwing pitches at you. You've got 2 minutes to try and hit as many home runs over the fence as you can. But if you ground the ball or if you miss a swing, it's 1 out and you only have 5 outs. So typically in these home run derbies, you may only have 1 or 2 runs scored. It's been very rare where I've seen one. It's a bit like a penalty shootout. Yeah. And then, you know, obviously whoever hits the winning home run, the team runs out onto the field. They douse them with like some ice water or Gatorade. And and I was literally lamenting, Sammy, in the first half of the season. I'm like, we have not had a single walk-off win. Like, what the fuck's going on? And lo and behold, back-to-back nights, we have 2 knockout rounds and we win both of them walking off. It was just like you couldn't script it. It was just nuts. And we had a third one in that same week. By the third one, we're just like, they can fucking win. We don't care. Like, it's, you know, we were just over it. But I must be honest, like, I don't like the fact that there's only 5 outs with grounding, because you can hit an absolute missile, like an absolute rocket, and it can just miss the top of the fence, and that's an out. I feel like if you had 10 outs or you could just keep swinging, you'd get a more exciting spectacle. But anyway, they might have to change the rules next season. But that's a pretty cool quirk of the sport, that's for sure, or our league in particular.
Well, if you're travelling through to America over the summer holidays and you go down to Davis to catch some baseball action.
You know where to find us.
Well, I look forward to catching up with you again, Michael, and of course, Jimmy, as we continue this In the Ballpark series periodically. But there'll definitely be a flood of content coming now as we get closer to the pointy end of the finals, because I'm telling you, you'll be able to feel the finals energy from across the seas, mate, because it's really heating up at the moment here, and oh man, I'm looking forward. I don't know how we went through those years without being able to go to the gym. I'm sure you miss the energy in the crowd. That's probably one thing that makes you homesick. Missing out on that fun here, but yeah, we'll do some live content and we'll try and get some things going. It'll be really awesome to see.
Oh, I'd love that a lot, Sammy. It's definitely been fun, I guess, watching. There's a really weird sense of just, I guess you lose all sense of control when you go to bed on a Friday night and you know that like the Saturday night results are happening like at 2, 3 a.m. in the morning. For you, it wouldn't be too bad, but for me, I like my beauty sleep, and I literally wake up and I've got like this sickening feeling in my stomach, knowing I have to check the scores, and I look and I'm just like, of course, we fucking lost to Melbourne by 30 points. You know, like there's this sense of inevitability, and then I'll read all the comments, watch all the replays, and it's just not the same, obviously, as having like that wood fire going, or even getting to the G, just getting absolutely soaked with rain. I mean, there is a beauty to it, and before we know it, Sammy, the weather will be a lot nicer, and that finals springtime will be in the air, and it'll be awesome. And I remember last time I was here in the US, it was the Pies and the West Coast Eagles in the grand final, so 2018. And watching that grand final here, I think it was like I was like 4 or 5 in the afternoon the day before. Oh, one of the best grand finals I've seen. And like the Americans were with me. They're like, let's go the Eagles. Woo! Like they were loving it.
Yeah, ironically, I was in London for that grand final. I was up at 5 a.m. to watch that. That was brutal, but it was great. Cheat from the boundary made it all worth it.
Oh, mate, how good. I remember I was also in England for the 2010 grand final, and my dad's a big St Kilda supporter. I remember we were at McDonald's trying to get Wi-Fi so we could get the scores. And I said to Dad, like for 3 minutes straight, I'm like, Dad, the scores are level. Like I keep trying to refresh my browser, but the scores aren't moving. And then I had to Google like St Kilda, Collingwood, and all of a sudden all these news stories. It's a draw. It's a draw. We're going to come back next week. And my dad was just fucking stunned. Like you could knock him over with a feather. So there's just stuff like that where you're just like, oh my God, you obviously you embrace it when you're at home. But when you're away, it's a whole different vibe. Like if Essendon do miraculously make it into a final and win one, I'll be walking around the streets here at like 3, 4 in the morning wearing an Essendon jersey, and people are just going to be looking at me like, "Why is this? Is this bloke on crack or something? Like, what's he doing?" Yeah. So me grabbing an enchilada, getting it all over the Essendon jersey. We fucking did that 24 years. But no, I don't think that's going to happen this year, Sammy. But hey. You got to hold out some hope, brother. You got to hold out some hope.
All right. Well, make sure you stay up to date with In the Ballpark across Instagram, Facebook, and all our social media. And thank you for listening.
Sammy, absolute pleasure. Look forward to the next time. Thank you, everyone.